Hi, this video is made for anyone who's interested in creating API using Ruby on Rails. When I say API, it means that our Rails application won't be rendering any HTML except for sending emails. This makes Rails super easy to write and enjoyable, because I usually find writing server-side rendered views mixed with API quite confusing. After you finished writing API in Rails, you have many front-end choices such as Vue.js, React.js, AngularJS, and any other frameworks that consume JSON as data. In the first lesson, we will be looking at the Rails magic. 1. Rails generate. 2. Rails model. 3. Rails console. I called it Rails magic because they all just works. I rarely has any bad experience with Rails. It saved me a lot of time and made me a lot of money. Please hit like and subscribe. I love seeing YouTube notifications. If you haven't installed Ruby yet, you might want to check out the setup video. The link is posted in this video description. I'm going to use Ruby version 3.0.0. Let's switch to that version using RVM by running RVM use 3.0.0. Now, my Ruby should be version 3 and gemset should be at default gemset. Then let's install Rails latest version by running gem install Rails. By running this command, Rails will be installed to Ruby 3.0.0 default gemset. The latest Rails version as of now should be around 6.1. This tutorial should work with any Rails version 4.1 and above. Now that we've installed Rails, you should have Rails command ready to use in terminal. Let's test it by running Rails -- version. Next, let's create a new Rails project. We will be creating Rails project for API only. It means that we don't want Rails to handle server-side HTML rendering. The command is Rails new Rails EPO1 --API. This should take a while if it's the first time you are creating Rails project. Upon completion, you should see a new folder called Rails EPO1. cd into that folder and run Rails server to start Rails. Open Chrome and browse to localhost 3000. You should see this screen. It means that your Rails is running with no problem. Next, we will be creating the model called book. Let's do it by running Rails generate model book name : text description : text pages : integer. Please recheck that book starts with capital B. All model name has to be in Pascal case or higher camel case. This is part of Rails conventions. The output of the Rails generate model command should include migration file and model file. Let's look at the migration file first. The migration file is written in Ruby. It can migrate database that it connects to. In Rails, creating model usually means there is a connection to database. In this case, SQLite 3. You can look at the database setting in config folder, database.yml file. The migration file will create a table called books, pluralized. This is important because the table is created to store multiple books, not just one book. Next, it is configured to create name and description as text, and pages as integer. Timestamp is created automatically for every table. I recommend that you keep it as is, since Rails will automatically set created and updated a timestamp for you. Moreover, for every table Rails created, it will create an ID as primary key column. Now let's look at the model file. It is called book model. It is a subclass of application record. Currently, there is nothing written in book model. Let's add something to book model. Let's add a function called full description. Once this function is called, it should print book's name, book's description, and book's pages. To test our model, we need to migrate the database first by running Rails db:/migrate. The output should explain what is being done to your database. Please note that migration will only run once. If you try to migrate database again, nothing will happen. This is because Rails keep track of the migration file. Now that the database is ready, let's test, create, read, update, delete our book. The process is usually called CRUD. We will be testing book in Rails console. Go to terminal and run Rails console, then hit enter. In this console, you can run any Ruby code and interact with your Rails application. For example, you have a book model. You can run b = book.new. B will now point to a book object with no data. Check the ID, it has no ID yet. Why? Because book.new is a new record that hasn't been saved to database yet. Let's save that book by running b.save. As you can see, the SQL generated by Rails is insert into. Recheck b, B should now have ID equal to 1. Created head and updated head is automatically set for you as well. No need to do extra work. Let's try running full description we wrote in the model earlier. You should see just \n because the book has no value yet. Let's assign some value to name, description and pages. You can assign values so easily, like an easy programming should be. By assigning values, those values are recorded only in memory. You must run b.save to persist data inside a database. Let's do that now. The SQL is now update because we are updating book with ID equals to 1. The value is now assigned to book. Let's try running full description function again. Notice that \n isn't translated to line break. It is because Ruby treat it as string. To see line break, you need to print the string by using puts command. To check whether data really persisted in database, let's restart Rails console. If you try to access B now, it will says that local variable is undefined. Because every time Rails console restarted, everything is reset except data in database. Let's retrieve the book that we previously created. We know that its ID is 1. To query, run b equal book.find 1. Book is retrieved with name, description and pages. You can also query book by name, for example to find books with name Geek Start. Books equal book.where name : Geek Start. Be warned, using .where means that you are expecting more than one object in return, because there may be more than one books with the name Geek Start in our database. Lastly, let's delete this book by running b.destroy. The SQL generated will be delete. Even though the record is gone from the database, B still remains in memory. If you try running b equal book.find 1 again, there should be an error because book with ID 1 cannot be found. I hope you enjoyed this lesson 1 of Ruby on Rails. Learning programming should be simple and fun. So don't get bored just yet, there are so much more to learn. This video is recorded by Sacco. I am not a native English speaker. I tried recording with my own voice and it's really bad. So I hope you enjoyed Alex's voice from my Mac. Thanks for watching. Again please hit like and subscribe.